Hello and welcome to the interview. The fatal stabbing of a German man, allegedly by two migrants, has rocked the country and set off a chain of events that have exposed deep divisions. Rallies and counter-rallies have expressed support either for cosmopolitan values or for defending the German nation. Leading politicians have weighed in, while Chancellor Merkel looks stuck, no doubt wanting to back the liberal side more forcefully, but also mindful of the various right-wing groups that seem to have got a boost from the events in Chemnitz in the former East Germany. Well, to take a closer look at who those right-wing groups are and what they really represent, I'm joined by Edgar Grande, who is a specialist in civil society and political conflict at the Berlin Social Science Center, and he joins me from the German capital. Dr. Grande, welcome to you to the interview here on France 24. When you look at all the events since that stabbing, do you sense that Germany is experiencing a moment of deep change?
It's not only the end of a German welcome culture, that is openness towards foreigners, European integration, and so on. It's what we're right in the middle of an intense political debate on exactly these issues. It's the very question how open borders should be in the future, how much European integration we will have, and how open markets should be. All these issues are part of the controversy, and immigration issues since 2015 evidently are the most important ones among these. These are the drivers of political conflict these days in Germany, and they're changing the political landscape, they're changing the positioning of political parties, they're changing political coalitions and political alliances.
When you take a closer look at the anti-migrant protests, if we can take those first of all, one often hears people in those crowds saying, I'm not happy with someone doing a Nazi salute near me, but what other protest can I go to? There's no other kind of, so to speak, more moderate protest catering to my needs. Do you accept that kind of argument, or do you think it's bogus?
What we observe is that anti-immigration sentiments has meanwhile arrived at the very center of German society. It's not just a minority position, it's not just the position of the extreme right. And Chemnitz was very instructive in this regard because apparently moderate people joined forces, marched together with right-wing extremists.
Yeah. So if we accept that distinction then between moderate people and right-wing extremists, does that change anything in terms of support for the AfD, the Alternative for Germany? Or do you think when it comes to, for example, the regional election in Saxony, the AfD will not benefit because the moderate people, so to speak, will vote for somebody else? Or do you think this is changing as well? Is the electorate actually changing for the AfD?
It's a highly ambiguous process for all parties involved, including the AfD, because in previous years, one of the founding principles of the AfD was a clear demarcation between the AfD and extreme parties. We had such extreme parties, the National Democratic Party, the DVU, at the regional level in Germany in the 1990s and the 2000s, and it was evident that these parties were isolated. They were moderately successful at state elections, but they were quite isolated, and that the potential for such parties was limited. So, for very good reasons, the AfD decided to draw a clear line between its own membership and its own program and these parties. And this demarcation line has been eroding in the past month. It's, in my understanding, an open question whether the party will benefit or whether it will be damaging. I guess in the west of Germany, it will be rather damaging. It could be that in some parts of the east of Germany, this could bring new voters, an additional potential of voters to this party.
Yeah, an interesting point there you make about the disparities between the former East Germany and West Germany, which are still evident to this day. But I want to ask you a quick question about a relatively new phenomenon, Aufstehen, which I suppose we could translate as stand up. Can we this is clearly a movement with left-wing roots. Can we say that it is left-wing and anti-migrant?
For the moment, it's still unclear which profile this new, seemingly less left-wing movement will actually develop. If you look at its platform right now, it's a collection of well-known, more or less left-wing positions and issues centered on social inequality and social justice. But if you follow the debates in the formative phase of this movement, it's quite evident that one of the driving forces of the new movement is a repositioning of the left towards immigration issues, at least of parts of the left. There is a divide. We had this in the last party conference of Die Linke. There is a divide within the left on immigration issues, and Aufstehen, in a way, is a product of this divide. It indicates a new division. In my understanding, it indicates a new division within a new divide within the left rather than a new unifying force.
Yeah, a divide on the German left over the question of migration. Just briefly, I want to ask you, Dr. Grande, about how mainstream politicians have been handling the events in Chemnitz. And I want to just play you this quote, show you a quote from Horst Seehofer, the head of the Christian Social Union. Of course, you will have heard about this headline, "Migration is the mother of all political problems in the country." That's from the Rheinische Post. What do you make of that?
Well, it clearly indicates that Horst Seehofer hasn't understood what's going on in Germany in the past years, and it's rather an expression of the problems the moderate right parties have in addressing these new issues. In a way, it's rather that Horst Seehofer seems to be the father of some of the problems, not of all problems, but of some of the more recent problems.
I notice you're
in addressing
that's
these
what
issues.
an SPD member actually said, that Seehofer was the mother of problems. So I hear the quote there in what you're saying. But do you think, though, the CSU is in a way just as stuck as Angela Merkel's party? I mean, they also don't know how to position themselves with respect to the AfD, Pegida, and these other kind of movements. They're also kind of trying to find themselves, aren't they, the CSU?
It's both parties thus far haven't found a realistic position on immigration issues. The CSU tried to accommodate to the positions of the AfD in order to win back voters which which it lost to the AfD, and the CDU also has difficulties to find a middle ground between, on the one hand, euphoria, the euphoria of 2015, and the developments later on, which have led to problems as we have witnessed them at Chemnitz. So these parties have a problem, and they haven't found a realistic, an adequate approach to a policy approach to these problems, and an adequate response to the AfD as a new political force.
Yeah, and
Seehofer, for example, still assumes that the AfD is, in a way, a right party which can, whose voters can be brought back to the CSU. At closer inspection, we see that there is a significant share of voters from left-wing parties among AfD voters, and there is in particular a large number of former non-voters which are now mobilized by the AfD. So it's a completely different electorate than the CSU has in mind when it tries to address the AfD and immigration issues.
So a struggle of mainstream political parties that is familiar to anyone in France or Britain and other Western European countries. We'll have to end it there. Thank you so much, Edgar Grande, a specialist at the Berlin Social Science Center. That's all for this edition of The Interview. Thank you for watching.
Hello and welcome to Managua, the capital of Nicaragua, for an exclusive interview with the country's president, Daniel Ortega. The country is going through one of its worst crises, a crisis that has claimed a number of lives. We'll talk about the human rights situations, the relationship with the Trump administration, and the threat of international sanctions. Please join us for this exclusive interview here on France 24.
Exclusive on France 24 and France24.com.